G'day, it's time to paint some more tiny dudes with Toppy, and today we're going to be looking at a Deathguard Blight Hauler, which is admittedly a small vehicle, but exactly the same techniques that I'd be using to paint Deathguard or other Deathguard Marines, or even Deathguard for fantasy. So we're going to start off with these three colours here to paint the hull. Game colour camouflage green, model colour flat earth, and game colour dead flesh. We're going to do this first because this is a pretty messy technique. It's going to involve some dry brushing later on, so any other colours that we paint on are probably going to end up getting polluted. Which is probably not the right word to use, but you know, there's going to be cross-contamination. So let's just get on a nice even coat of camo green. Okay, well, we've got that base coat done over all the armor plates. Well, we're back, the base coat's finished, and it's time to add a shadow block using some Vallejo model color flat earth. What we're going to be doing here is using a, what size is this? This is a size 0. It doesn't need to be a tiny brush, you don't want a huge brush. And we're just going to be dabbing some paint into anywhere where two surfaces join. So all the seams, all the gaps, along the edges of all the exciting big metally worky bits. And we're going to do this fairly roughly. Doesn't need to be perfect. In fact, it looks better if it's messy. Okay, well, we've got our shadow blocking done. You might notice there's some areas where, for example, back here, there's actually no sort of line between surfaces, but there's a bit of a dip there, so I decided let's just put some shadow block in there anyway. Well, here we are again, and it's time for the last stage of our Deathguard armor. This is the dead flesh dry brush. So I've got my game colour dead flesh here, and I've got my dry brush with me as well. This is a size 0 stenciling brush. I find these work really nicely for dry brushes. Going to get some paint on, wipe almost all of it off onto our paper, and then start dry brushing by wiping back and forth, back and forth, back and forth over the area we want. Now, usually with dry brushing, we just choose the direction the light's coming from, generally the top of the model, and we brush in that direction. But for this technique, I'm going to be moving the brush around quite a lot, different directions, and it gives this nice, weathered, horrifying, diseased green highlight. And it also leaves behind that nice warm shadow from the shadow blocking. So I'm going to do that over all of these pieces. And you can watch in the magic of fast motion. And my cat can meow at me through the door, demanding tribute of some sort. Just have to wait and realise that there are some things that actually override the claim of cats. Not many, but painting Deathguard is one of them. One day he's going to learn to understand that. Well, there we go. It's given us a nice nauseating pale green with some nice warm brown highlights going on there. Of course, we can go in and do maybe a little bit of edge brushing and extreme pickups and things like that. It's time to move on to the next step on young Pucus Disguster here. And that's going to be some blushing flesh, Green Stuff World colour, this one. There's a lot of flesh areas on one of these blight haulers, so we're going to do that starting on the inside and working our way out, as is usually a good policy. I realise it might get a bit frustrating not being able to see where my paintbrush is, but trust me, I can't really see where my paintbrush is in some of these places either. So you're getting just as good an idea of what's going on as I am. There we are. Flesh colour onto all the various, roughly speaking, fleshy bits. Highlighting time. Now this has got rather a lot of flesh, so I'm going to be highlighting with GSW's Dwarf Flesh. This is the largest massive flesh I've done so far for my Deathguard, so I have in the past only gone as far as Dwarf Flesh, but that's been on just, you know, hands and faces, that kind of thing. So I might actually be taking this a few steps further. We'll see how it looks. Okay, stage 1 flesh highlight done. I'm definitely going to go for a second flesh highlight stage here. There's a lot of detail here that needs to be picked out, so what I think I'm going to do is add some dead flesh to my current mixture. The resultant colour is quite horrific. I think that does the flesh quite nicely. I'm going to muck around a little bit with a different shade to put into the sort of open fleshy bits of the tubes, the bits with the sort of ribby effect in them. So I've made up a really quite horrific mixture based on the highlight colour I just had with some purple added, and then a bit more rotting flesh and a bit more dwarf flesh, and I've been painting that into the ribby bits, which I think looks pretty good, so I'm going to be using that, and we're going to be highlighting that in a second. Now I'm thinking there's a few bits around the mouth that I probably want to change the colours of and mess around with a bit, but I think I'll just do that with washes. So let's move on to our next step and take a brief hiatus. Hiatus time! Oh, it's a while since I've said that. So our next step is going to be painting all the sort of horn, bone, chitin, I suppose, areas, teeth, claws, little stingy spike thing on the back. There are no skulls on this one, but they'd be painted at this stage as well. And the weird chimney growths that all Nurgle stuff seems to have these days. And we're going to start that off with Arrakis Brown, followed by Sandstorm and Ivory Tusk highlights. Okay, painted a little stinger thing on the back there. Painted all the big toothy peg things on the front there. There's some bits in there you'll see that aren't painted because they're mechanical. It's kind of hard to actually hold this model in such a way that you can really see into the mouth area particularly well. But let's let that dry and we'll start our highlighting. Alright, time for the highlighting stages. Sandstorm, followed by Ivory Tusk. Looking a little extreme there. But as ever, wash covers a multitude of sins, and I've just realised the sin it's not going to cover is the fact that I've completely forgotten to paint all of those weird chimney things on the back. Curses. I'll be back later. Alright, it's just about time to paint the weapons, but before we do that, I want to try something. So there are a few veins in various places on here. One sort of just in there, on the other side somewhere, just about there. And I've decided to paint them purple. But instead of using my normal paintbrush, I want to test drive this. This is one of those silicon paintbrushes. I figure it's going to hold a good point since it's basically solid. Originally I bought these to use for sculpting, but I accidentally ended up buying the ones that are too small. Not too small, sorry, too soft. I've since bought some of the hard ones, but I've been using this to apply putty. It's proved very good. So I thought, let's actually try this out as a paintbrush, because its point can't fray or anything, so it's got quite a good point. I tried putting in the veins, and it looks like it's actually doing quite a good job. So I don't have to feel guilty about how much money I spent on this by accident buying the wrong kind of silicon shaper. Turns out I accidentally bought the soft ones, and for sculpting you need the extra hard ones. There, that looks pretty good. As far as cleaning is concerned, just treat it like a normal paintbrush. It's really good for actually putting putty into small locations and just sort of smoothing out. I used it to try and fill the cracks on the back of this thing's mudguard because it did not line up well at all. I wasn't entirely successful in that attempt. However, let's get back to the main part. We were going to paint the weapons, and for my Deathguard I use a turquoise colour scheme. It starts with Citadel colour, Incubi Darkness. This is the only Citadel colour I actually use. And that's entirely because I had an idea to paint some House Delark guys for Necromunda, and I wanted to paint them a very dark turquoise, and this is the darkest turquoise I could find. I couldn't find an equivalent in any of the other brands. But it's going to be highlighted up with game colour turquoise and model colour blue-green. You can't actually see the names on those bottles anymore. They've rubbed off with age. So we're going to start by painting the casing sort of bits of the guns. And this is a bit of a throwback to that classic era when I started playing, and every weapon was painted a crazy colour. This is sometimes known as the infamous red period, because all of the Space Marines had bright red bolt guns, and all of the Orcs had bright red bolt guns, because yes, in 2nd edition, Orcs also used bolt guns. In fact, basically everyone just used the standard Imperial weapons. Even Warhammer Fantasy Goblins had bright red spear shafts. Instead of painting them a sensible wooden colour, everything was red and very cartoony and extremely jolly, and not at all grim dark. And this is even though 40k always had that. In the grim darkness of the far future there is only war. That was written on the cover, but everything was red and cheerful. And I thought I'd sort of go back to that. Not paint things red, because that's not a very noble colour, but, you know, give the weapons an exciting colour. So I've been using turquoise. I don't know if the microphone picked that up, but that was his master's voice. There it was again. Yeah, I think it's lunchtime. Time to go with our highlight stages. So this is our game colour turquoise. Might just be able to work out what it says. second stage highlight, the even more illegible blue-green. This is a model colour rather than a game colour. Okay, I think that's about right. Well, the time is now here for metallics. So I've got a slightly old collection of paints here, only two of which are metallic, because we're going to start with the rust. Usually I'd start with black and just like stipple this on the top, but that's a bit messy and I want to try something slightly different. I'm going to paint solid beastie brown, because I usually put on pretty much solid beastie brown anyway. And then we're going to take it up through a couple of other shades to get our rust effect onto the trunks. Alright, need to leave that to dry for a while and then we'll come back for the next step. Alright, time to start on our rust properly. So we're going to knock the paints over. We're going to use some game colour Parasite Brown and some model colour Orange Red. Doesn't really matter too much what orange, but I find that one has a nice strong pigment. And we're going to be stippling these onto the rusty areas. So in addition to my paints, I've also got this large pretty rubbish brush. Get some paint, wipe most of it off, and we're going to start stabbing at the surfaces, which in technical painting terms is called stippling. And that going to give us a nice rusty effect. And that looks about right. We'll probably hit that with a bit of a wash just to put some more shadow into the gaps, give it a bit more detail, but of course we're going to paint the rest of the metallics before we do that. We're going to be using two metallics. We've got Brassy Brass and Tinny Tin. I'm going to start with the Tinny Tin. Alright, I'm pretty sure that is now actually finished with... Oh, no it's not. There's a lot of different things on here that need to be painted metallic, and it's really easy to miss one every now and again. Okay, I think I'm now like 47% certain that apart from a few little touch-ups like that there, that we have now got all of our metallics painted. So it's time to put things aside to dry once more. There's a few other things that need to be touched up, and then we're ready for finalising things. And I've been recording for over an hour so far. Wow, just for this one shot. Good grief. Alright, last stage before we can do washes. We are going to do, apart from dropping the paint, a bit of gory red here and some ember orange. We're going to do some of the various pimples and things all over this thing. So I've done the various pimples and things. Now what we're going to do is thin down some of our red core, nice and thin. And we're going to start flowing that into some of these wounds and lesions. Dry for a little bit, and then we're going to be hitting it with some pretty serious underwashes. Okay, time to tie pretty much everything together. It's time to apply a nice umber wash. Vallejo Game Color Umber. Now, we're not going to apply this straight. We are actually going to thin this down just a little. So I'm going to be adding a few drops of water. And we're applying this over all of the flesh areas and all of the metal. In fact, we're basically putting this over everything but the armor and the turquoise weapon casings. It's going to look very glossy at the moment, so you can't really tell what it will look like when it's completed. But all of the washes are on, and now we're going to leave that to dry overnight. Well, here we are in the next morning, so this is dried overnight, and we can tell time has passed because my band-aid's starting to get really scuffed up. So, this is just about finished. What we need to do now is just put some more highlights onto the metal surfaces, just to make them pop a little bit. We do want them to look quite corroded, but they do need to have a bit more definition. So we're going to be using some Game Color gunmetal. And we're just going to do a little bit of edge brushing and pick out a few rivets. And that will make everything much, much better. So what I'm going to be doing here is using the side of my brush, not the actual point, but the side of my brush, and just running that along the edges of some of these sharp metal surfaces, and that'll pick up a nice crisp line along the edge, and that'll help with this weathered metal look we're going for. I don't want this to be absolutely consistent. I don't want it to be a solid line, because if it's broken up, it'll also help make everything look a bit more weathered. I'd say this is basically finished. There's one last thing I want to do before I get onto basing. Basing will be a separate video because this video will have gone on long enough, but I'm just going to mix up some thinned down red paint. We're just going to wash a few areas of the flesh to make them look a bit more inflamed and angry, and possibly do a little bit of highlighting on some of those pimples, but that is going to wrap things up. Flow that into the sort of areas which should be inflamed, like where the mechanically bits are intersecting the fleshy bits around the wounds, and where the metal's digging in to the flesh. Okay, that's nice and inflamed and disgusting. So I think that apart from basing, we're going to declare this guy finished. We're going to let it dry for a bit, and then we're going to take one of those sexy spinny shots. And I've got a new tool for doing that. I bought myself a turntable.